Hello, I'm John Kneebone and welcome to Mainline Bait's Carp Fishing TV and another how-to video, where today I'm going to show you how to tie the Hinge Rig. It's got a reputation as a big fish rig, and that's mainly down to the situation it's often used in. Perhaps low stock pits holding big carp, where you need a rig that's able to reset itself, it's super reliable and it's going to give you a lot of confidence. This pop-up rig does all of that, so let's get started and show you how to put it together. The Hinge Rig is a pop-up rig and it's suitable for all types of pop-ups, whether or not you're fishing a match to hatch style hook bait like these cork dust pop-ups, or a high visual pop-up like these milky toffees. Okay, there's two sections to this rig, and for the first stiff section you're going to need some mouth trap or stiff monofilament. We're then going to use a size 6 choddy hook. I've got a size 8 ring swivel. We've then got a little micro ring, and that's to go on the D section, and then finally got a little bit of putty for counterbalancing the pop-up. For the second section we're going to use some soft fluorocarbon to tie up our boom section. I've also got an anti-tangle sleeve that generally features in all the rigs I tie. I've then got a standard boilie baiting needle, and just like this to help me tie fiddly knots such as the loop knots that we'll be using. I'll be using some bait floss for attaching the hook bait, and then for blobbing the knots down of the floss we'll be using a lighter. Then got a pulley tool and a chodit tool for tightening down our knots and shaping our D section near the hook. Finally, a sharp pair of scissors is vital to tying up the rig. So the first thing to do is pull away some of the mouth trap stiff monofilament. I've got about 6 to 7 inches there, just cut that away, and then we're going to take our hook and just pass one end of that monofilament through the back of the eye like so, and then what we're trying to do is leave the memory in that line going the same way to the curve that we'll be creating to help the rig turn in the fish's mouth. Just making sure that we leave a couple of inches of a tag end coming out of the hook, and that'll be for creating our D section later. But the first thing that we're going to do is attach our hook with a knotless knot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns around the hook, and then just one final turn to come over and just to hold all those turns nice and tightly together. Then we can take our tag end, pass that back through the back of the eye, pull that down, just neaten everything up, just tying it down, just making sure all those turns are nicely lined up on the hook, and there we go, we've secured the hook into position. We can now take our micro ring and just slide that onto that tag end, and then take that tag end over itself and back through the eye of the hook, and just pull that tight. Don't leave a D section yet, we're going to create that in a moment, so pull it tightly through. And then what I do is just take my scissors, line them up with the point of the hook, and that's where I like to just trim off that tag end. And then I can just take my lighter and then just carefully just get a burning blob, blow that out, and that should just leave 3 to 4 mil still protruding, and that's just enough room that when we take our chodit tool we put it into that D, pull that tag back, we've now got a nice D section, and we haven't had to blob that tag end near the rest of the line or the knot and potentially damage it. We can now attach the hook bait, so just going to take off a good 6-7 inches of the bait floss, just pays to have plenty to work with, and then we're just going to take that through the micro ring on the D section now, and then I like to even up each tag end to the same length and take one end over my index finger like so. So we're creating a big loop, and then with one tag end we create a smaller loop over the top of that big loop, go behind it and pass that tag end through once. A little bit fiddly there, but and twice to create a slip knot. And we can now take our hook bait, so one of the milky toffees, and just line it up centrally in that loop, and then just gently tighten down, but not all the way, because we just want to check that that floss is lining up around the center of that pop-up, just so that it'll be nice and secure. And there we go, we can now tighten that down, just let that floss just pinch into the pop-up just that little bit. Trim up the tag ends, leaving around about 1 centimeter in length. We can grab our lighter again and just carefully blob down that floss. And as you notice, we're able to do this away from the rest of the line and the knot, because we can now just slide that hook bait around so the knots are underneath, nice and neat next to the ring. But like I say, we've not been blobbing or putting the lighter close to our knot. Okay, we'll now take our size 8 ring swivel, and if you wanted to tie a chod rig at this point, I would just tie our stiff section to the small end of that swivel. But I like a bigger loop in the hinge rig as opposed to the size of that ring, so I'm just gonna use my pliers just to cut through that ring and remove it, so that all we've got left is that little size 8 swivel. So we can now take our stiff hook link section, pass that through one end of the swivel, and we're now just setting the height that we want the pop-up to sit off the lake bed. I like it quite short, and then pinching everything nice and tight, we're going to go 1-2 turns around to make a simple 2-turn blood knot. Now that might not seem like a lot of turns, but believe me, with a stiff material like this, that's all you need. So we just moisten that knot down, just pull it down, and as you can see, there's no slipping at all there. 2 turns in that stiff material is all you need. Just take our tag end, just trim it off, leaving around about 1 centimeter. Back with the lighter, just put a little blob on that tag end, just as an extra precaution. And there you go, that's the short section of our hinge rig securely tied. All we need to do now is shape a nice curve into that stiff section of the rig using your thumb like so. And that's the beauty of using a stiff monofilament for this section, is it's got enough memory that it'll hold its shape. There you go, that's that part complete. All we need to do now is make our boom section. So I've got my fluorocarbon, just going to pull off a good 12, maybe 14 inches of that material. Just paste to have plenty to work with. And then we just take one end through the swivel that's attached to the stiff section. Leave ourselves a nice little loop there. We're now going to tie a figure of 8 loop knot. So we fold the material back on itself and then take both tag ends, the long and the short, underneath that first loop, pass it over the top and down through the first loop that we've made. There we go, get that little tag end through there as well. And there we go, we've just created a nice figure of 8 loop knot there. Just going to moisten that down with a little saliva, just so that we can now tighten that down without damaging that monofilament. And just gently snug that down, and hopefully you'll be able to see that we've now created a nice loop there for that stiff section to move upon, and it's probably 2-3 times the size of what the ring would have been had we used the swivel. So we can now move over to the other end of our boom section, thread on our anti-tangle sleeve, and we're now going to tie a second figure of 8 loop knot at this end of the boom. So again, we make a loop, we then make one big loop, pass our first loop under that big loop. I'm then going to take my baiting needle, come up through that second loop, grab the first loop and pull that back through, and just gently just tease that down. Again, add a little saliva there and just tease it with the baiting needle. I'm not going to pull too tight, there's nothing worse than breaking off a baiting needle. No, we're going to use the pulley tool and the jodit tool to pull that boom section down and tighten both of those loop knots. There we go. We can now neaten things up a little bit. So we cut off the tag end at the end of the boom there, thread on our anti-tangle sleeve, so we've got a nice neat boom section there, so that we can hook the rig quickly and easily onto a quick change swivel. There we go. And then again at the other end, just take away that tag end, and now I want to shape that loop, give it a nice round shape. So again, turn to the jodit tool and just pull it tightly within that loop, and there we go. We've got a nice long rounded loop for that stiff section to move upon. And as you can see, there's lots of movement there now, which means that should any feeding fish approach that stiff section, it's going to turn quickly and grab hold. We're almost there. What we need to do now is add some counterbalance for our pop-up. So I'm going to take a little piece of putty and just add that to the top of the swivel where that meets the stiff section. Just squeeze that down. That swivel just makes the perfect gripping point for this bit of putty, and we just round it between finger and thumb to get a nice neat barrel like shape. And there we go, nice and neat, just enough to hold that pop up down. I then like to take a smaller second piece of putty and just add that to the knot on the loop of the boom section, and again just mold that around, just gently rolling it to make a nice neat barrel like shape. It just means it's just holding this end of the boom down tightly to the bottom, allowing that stiff section to do its thing. And there we go, that's both pieces of putty in position. Just to remove any memory we might have caused in tying the rig, we're just going to give that boom section one last pull under tension, and there you go, that's the hinge rig complete and ready to go. The hinge rig can then be fished helicopter style like this above the lead, or on a simple lead clip system. Now the hinge rig is what you might term a pretty heavy rig, but as you can see, a super buoyant pop-up like that milky toffee is holding that stiff section up at an aggressive angle perfectly. We've now switched to a link cork dust pop-up, a fantastic presentation for when you're fishing over a spread of boilies, and as you can see, that D section is going to ensure that when that hook bait is ejected, it will fly over the eye of the hook, pulling that hook point down into the bottom lip of the carp. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, hit the notification button so you know when our next video is coming out. Now far too many of you watch these videos but don't yet subscribe to the channel, so please hit that subscription button below. It only takes a couple of seconds to subscribe to the channel and it's really important. And if you'd like to watch more how-to videos, I'll leave links to those here. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.